While the Western Balkans has been a favoured route for migrants, it's also become a lucrative spot for transferring illicit funds. That's according to a recent report conducted by the Geneva-based NGO Global Initiative. The group says the Balkans is a major gateway for illicit money from Russia. Its report states that deep-rooted problems, including corruption and organised crime, have helped fuel the lucrative money trade. Added to that is the war in Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia that followed. Hoping to bypass Western restrictions, Russians have bought real estate and business assets all over the Western Balkans. But how deep is the problem? According to the report, Russia's illicit financial flows in the Balkans comprise 6% of the region's GDP. With the start of the war in Ukraine, Russian elites turned to the Balkans to protect their wealth and avoid sanctions. Since the war began, Russian nationals registered 5,000 new companies in Serbia alone. The region's past struggles against corruption, organised crime and a weak judiciary have made it vulnerable to such illicit financial flows. And now let's bring in Vanya Petrova. She is a senior policy analyst at Center for the Study of Democracy and joins us now from Sofia. Thank you very much for being with us today. So Vanya, first of all, can we take a step back and can you help us understand what illicit financial flows are and how do they work?
Yes, sure. First of all, it's a great pleasure having you. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's go back a little bit and what is illicit finance, or what are illicit financial flows, right? So illicit cross-border financial flows estimated at somewhere between 1 and 1.6 trillion US dollars a year globally are harming economic development on a national and global level. And autocracies have long utilized obfuscated corporate ownership structures and illicit financial flows for all sorts of nefarious purposes, such as bribery, improper lobbying, corruption, to secure anything from technologies and know-how to economic and political influence on the countries of interest. Basically, understanding and estimating IFF's illicit financial flows is quite a challenge. It's actually a Herculean task because there is no universally accepted definition. There is no single indicator that can comprehensively capture this phenomenon.
Right.
But if I can try to say something like a definition, then illicit financial flow, basically, this is dirty money, money which is illegally earned, used, or moved, and they cross an international border. According to a little bit more broader definition, then illicit financial flows are funds that go through legal loopholes and other artificial arrangements and circumvent the spirit of the law.
Right.
So see, we don't equate here illicit with illegal, right? So
right.
Basically, a financial flow can be classified as illicit if either its origin, so the source which the money are coming from, or the method which is used to moving it. So this is the channel, or eventually its eventual use is illegal. And basically, the main, I would say, three sources of illicit finance, illicit financial flows. This is number one is corruption-related crime. Number two is organized crime. So illicit finance coming from organized crime. And number three, that would be tax-related crime.
Right.
These are
Vanya,
the three sources.
Even if there's no actual definition, as you say, it is a very big amount, between 1 and 1.6 trillion, you're saying, per year around the world. And even if there is no such thing as a definition for these illicit funds, what sort of harm do they do to certain regions and the Balkans in particular?
Basically, illicit finance promote rent-seeking and criminal behavior, and they reduce the government capacity to support development and inclusive growth. They undermine the rule of law, and at the same time, they jeopardize the business environment. So illicit flows drain public resources, and they reduce the scope and the quality of public services, and thus they undermine confidence in the state and in institutions.
All right, so there's legal and
illi-
economic consequences for these regions.
and you know, at the same time, they kindle corruption and strategic corruption and state capture. So a little bit of contextualizing of illicit financial flows in the Western Balkan region. So unfortunately, I would say IFFs in the Western Balkans, or broadly saying in Southeastern Europe, unfortunately, they are manifold, they're multi-directional, and they're proportionally large as a percentage of the national and regional GDPs. So here, you know, if you think about it, as we said, that 1.6 trillion US dollars a year, then if we have the global estimates of illicit financial outflows are somewhere between 3 and 5% of world GDP, then we have estimated that IFFs in the Balkans are actually double that size. So they're estimated as somewhere around 6%. And this is when I'm talking about the whole region.
Yeah, we'll go back to that point as well in a second. Sorry for interrupting. I just want to ask you, how has the war in Ukraine affected this illicit funds, particularly in this region, and why?
This is one of the main focus of this last report, which we did together. I mean, in collaboration, we at the Center for the Study of Democracy and the Global Initiative Against Trans-Organized Crime. So we are trying to look at the main risks and vulnerabilities of IFFs after the war in Ukraine. As a disclaimer here, I would say, of course, 1 year after the war, it's not so easy to have like a real estimates, to have to rely so much on data, but still there are a few main points. I urge you to look at the report and also look at our database, where you can actually find the estimates of illicit financial inflows and outflows in the last 20 years for every country as percent of GDP and as a sum as well. So basically, the Kremlin has repeatedly taken advantage of its integration into the Western financial system to exploit governance gaps through the corrosive effect of illicit finance.
Right.
What we see after the war is that, again, the Western Balkan region remains one of the most vulnerable soft targets for the Kremlin's ongoing hybrid war against the EU and the democratic
that's
West.
Interesting.
And we have the combination of, first, state and media capture. Media capture is also a very important element in the whole picture. And simmering ethnic divisions between and within countries, and the slow pace of EU accession. Also the legacy of Russian cognitive bias.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why this region is more vulnerable, right? Vanya, I just want to ask you one last question because we are running out of time. And I just want to ask you, as you said, the Balkans are estimated to have higher illicit cross-border flows as percentage of GDP. Which countries, though, are more vulnerable in this region?
So, in general, I would say the whole region has about double the estimate on the global level. If you look at all the different countries, you would see that some of them are most vulnerable to inward flows. Some are more vulnerable to outward flows. But basically, illicit outflows as a percentage of GDP, we could say that Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina is probably the most vulnerable. As you already know, 3 to 5%. This is the global estimate, and the estimate for Bosnia and Herzegovina is above 8%. This is when I'm talking about illicit financial outflows. Then we have Kosovo around 8%, 7 point something. North Macedonia above 5%, and most vulnerable, I would say, to illicit inflows that would be also Croatia, Bulgaria.
All right. We ran out of time, but Vanya Petrova, I want to thank you very much for your analysis and for being with us today. And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching and see you next time.